Well, hey everyone, I'm Sandra Moore, and I want to talk to you today about the spiritual discipline of silence and solitude. Silence and solitude is where you intentionally set aside time to be alone and quiet with God. Now, my journey with silence and solitude began a few years back, or at least it should have begun then. I would hear God inviting me into this spiritual practice, either through scripture or just feeling a gentle tug of invitation. But my immediate response was always that's not for me. I'm not good at silence. I'm a people person. It's just too hard. That's not how I'm wired. I would even try and spiritualize my refusal by telling myself that I was extroverted and I had tons of words and that's just how God had created me. That I just connected with Him through worship and prayer, Bible reading, and that silence and solitude, that just wasn't what God had for me. But God patiently waited and He nudged again and again. I even received some artwork that had Psalm 23, 2 and 3 on it. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. And I'd look up at it and I'd hear God whisper to me, I want to lead you beside still waters and restore your soul. But I repeated all the reasons and excuses of why I wouldn't accept His invitation. That it couldn't be God whispering because He knows me. And I don't do quiet or alone. When it was apparent to me that the nudges were continuing and realizing that refusing God was probably not the best decision I could make, I decided to give it a try. And if I'm honest, and I'm ashamed to admit it, I decided it with a bit of an attitude. I definitely didn't have the suggested attitude to enter into a new spiritual practice. But thankfully, God is gentle and patient, and for that, I'm extremely grateful. So I read some articles. I looked at scriptures where Jesus had practiced solitude, like in Mark 1:35, rising early in the morning, He departed and went out to a desolate place. And in Luke chapter 5, after crowds began forming to see the miracles that Jesus was performing and to hear His teaching, He would withdraw to a desolate place and pray. In Luke chapter 6, verse 12, before He chooses His 12 disciples, which were His closest followers, He went out to the mountain to pray all night. And in John 6:15, Jesus withdrew to the mountain by Himself. Jesus understood the importance of being alone with God. And I started to read a few books on this practice, and then my journey began. Now, Invitation to Solitude and Silence by Ruth Haley Barton was a super helpful book to me, but don't feel like you have to read books or completely educate yourself on the topic in order to begin. What I did read suggested to start with small amounts of time and build from there. My plan consisted of 2 minutes of silence, followed by a short devotion and a scripture reading, and I ended with an additional 2 minutes of silence. So it's okay if you start small. Just find a plan that seems doable so that you won't feel overwhelmed before you even get started. So I found a place and a time that helped me stay free of distractions. So figure out what works for you. Some people like to be outside where they can walk or sit in the fresh air. I, on the other hand, am distracted by the grass growing. Seriously, anything can distract me. So I needed to be indoors and my family needed to be sleeping. Now, 4 in the morning doesn't work for everyone. In fact, it probably only works for me, but that's okay. There's a perfect time that does work for you. Even if it changes depending on the day, just find the right time and place. Find a position that works for you, like standing or kneeling, sitting. I even have a friend that lays face down on the floor. So whatever feels comfortable to you, that's what's important. I sit in a comfortable chair with my eyes closed and my arms relaxed and my face is tilted upwards. For me, this feels like I'm looking towards God, like I'm ready to meet with Him. So try out a few different positions until you find one that helps you feel relaxed and ready to meet with God. Now, I wish I could tell you that my first few weeks of practicing silence and solitude were amazing. They were actually quite the opposite. They were torture. I'm not going to lie. My mind was so noisy and cluttered and busy that stopping all the noise was quite a challenge. I would close my eyes, take a deep breath in through my nose and out through my mouth, and say in my mind, God, I'm here. I want to meet with you. And then thoughts of housework and meetings and deadlines and all of the things of the day would come flooding in. Another deep breath in and out. God, I'm here and I want to meet with you. And then again, the thoughts would come flooding in and I would redirect again and again and again. Now, somewhere in the first couple of weeks, my mindset shifted. I began to focus on the fact that God had invited me to this time with him, and that if he invited me, then this was something that I desperately needed and that it would change me for the better. That nothing that was on my to-do list was more important than my time with God. Now, my mind was still all over the place, and I had to fight to constantly redirect my focus to silence because my awareness of God and his voice had been dulled by distraction. I had to learn to turn off all the noise, to stop all the internal chatter, and find a comfortable time, place, position to meet with God by focusing on my breathing and redirecting any thoughts that attempted to distract me from meeting with God so that I could be still and know that he was God. This comes from practice. Psalm 62:1 says, "For God alone my soul waits in silence." So I would continually repeat, God, I'm here. I want to meet with you. I'll wait for you. And as the noise quieted a bit, I could hear God encouraging me. Thoughts of laundry or yard work would pop in my head, and I'd hear him whisper, nothing's more important than what we're doing here together. And once I was able to quiet the noise, little by little, I added more time to my silence. And it became easier and easier. And I would actually find the time to move quickly. Without distraction, God's voice became clearer and stronger than ever before. And meeting with him became something that I yearned for. It was fulfilling and refreshing in a way that I had never experienced. God's presence transforms us like nothing else. I look forward to it. It is the highlight of my day, and I can't imagine my life without it now. What a change from where I began. But it took practice and determination. But most worthwhile things do. You've got this. God is inviting you to meet with him. What an amazing invitation. The God of the universe wants to meet with you. So take him up on his offer because it will change your life.